Things good, Gary?
As good as can be. I've been reading that California is starting to go into deeper lockdown.
Yep, it's getting tough again, but Northern California is still okay currently.
Yeah.
So
I'm going to say hello to everybody, and then we could chat a little bit while we're waiting for everybody to join.
you got it.
I can't see you guys, so I don't know who's on or who's not on yet. But I'm Gary Fisch, Gary's Wine Marketplace. I'm here with Tim Duncan and his boss and son, Matt Duncan. I can say that because working with my son, he makes me work harder now than I've ever worked. I mean, every time he's got an idea, I'm the one with ideas. Now he's coming to me with all these ideas, and I have to work now. You know, I'm doing these Zoom tastings because he thinks it's a good idea. I don't know.
Gary, that's more true than you know. I have no fault with anything you said. That's exactly our life.
But it's great. It's exciting.
Yeah, do this. Did you read that? Did you think this? No, stop.
He sends me stuff. I send him stuff. I scare him when I have an idea. He petrifies me when he has an idea. But it's exciting because you have somebody that's obviously thinking the same way. It may not be from the same direction,
Right.
but our goals are identical, right?
Yeah.
It's to grow the family business. So as long as that's the same, and he, doesn't change the name of the company to Mike's Wine and Marketplace, we're all good.
Well, that may happen too, but
Yeah, you never know.
not today.
We'll give everybody, for those of you listening in, we'll start in a couple seconds. Usually people are a little late entering. And we were just talking a little bit about, obviously, what's on everybody's mind in Napa when it's not fires, it's COVID. And the governor kind of moved up the closures or the reduced
potential closures.
Yeah, it's gone to a zone defense kind of thing. So we are not looking too bad right now. But if it does continue in the trend they assume, right, tasting rooms would have to close again. I think even outdoors, but I'd have to dig into the details. But so far, so good right now. We are open outside and doing the best we can.
Yeah. Do you have space here? Are you using store heaters or no? It's still nice.
Yeah, and some, compliant tinting. The two Twomey wineries, one in Napa and one in Sonoma County, unfortunately don't have, we don't have enough infrastructure to do it outside. So we did close those, but Silver Oak and Alexander Valley and Oakville are both, ready and willing and both went to 7 days a week. So we could accommodate guests from Twomey.
That's good. And I've seen you obviously in St. Helena a couple of times, and and I've been there really a lot since I was there up until March 15th.
Wow.
And then my wife got there on like the 10th, Liz, or 11th. Liz got there, and then I was in the store on the 15th, and she called me and said, "We're leaving now." And,
back and go. Yeah.
And we just literally left, and then I came back the first week of September for 3 weeks. But I was there with that after the first fire and all the smoke, and before the second fire. So it was.
Yeah.
It was, it was a challenging time. But anyway, I'm going to start and let's get on to positive stuff, which is
positive stuff.
Drinking great wines and talking to, I'll put one old friend and one new friend in the category. It's my pleasure tonight to do a Zoom tasting with Tim Duncan, and I think you got some fancy title, right? Proprietor and Chief Revenue Officer. Does that mean you have to sell wine to generate revenue?
That means I'm a sales guy. Exactly. Same thing I've been doing all these decades.
Aren't we all?
Same
and
thing.
Matt, what's your title, Matt?
And I am a California sales manager, so manager
okay,
wholesale business in California. Yeah.
Newly
minted.
In the world of consolidations and in the world of confusion, it's great to see a family business continue to thrive. And I've watched, you guys literally from close and far for a very, very long time. And the opportunity to do this tasting is very, very exciting to me. And I would like, oh, I was going to, Tim, I was going to talk about you when you left.
So water, but I'll worry later. Yeah, thank you. Go ahead.
But for those of you who don't know Tim, he, in a positive way, reminds me a little bit of myself. And that is, the preference is not to sit in an office and do work. The preference is to be, whether it's out in the vineyards or out in front meeting and greeting people. And whenever I'm in Napa, I see you, right? Whether it's at a restaurant or in an event, a charity event. I know you've been the chair of the June auction, I believe, and I think you and your brother co-chaired P&B one year.
Correct. Yep, that's right.
So your involvement in the local community is something that I hold near and dear. Whether for me it's a dual role, and that's New Jersey community as well as the greater Napa community. So without further ado, I figured, Tim, why don't you give a little background, and then Matt will correct you.
Perfect, Gary. Thank you.
And wait, while you're doing that, I think we should start drinking, right?
Yeah,
So,
please.
I have a Twomey Sauvignon Blanc 2019 in my glass. Why don't you tell a little bit about that, and then we can start tasting it, and then you could tell us stories while we're tasting.
Sure. We do end up kind of going from start to finish, or sorry, finish to start, I guess, meaning the last wine we came up with back in 2007 was that Sauvignon Blanc, but it's a great place to start the evening. So again, thanks, Gary. Thanks for all the support, not just for Silver Oak and Twomey and our brands, but the greater community. We are a very active P&B participant and have helped shoulder a lot of interest in that very important event for the Napa Valley and for the vendors themselves. So we started back in '72 with Silver Oak, but now going from the most recent wine, which is our Sauvignon Blanc, that was really an outgrowth of a vineyard in a property we bought near Calistoga and had 14 acres of what was called the Carpenter Vineyard, a pretty famous Sauvignon Blanc vineyard on it, right on Dunawheel Lane. So we just experimented for 3 years, I think 04, 5, and 6, and then eventually decided that the wine was good enough to put under the Twomey label. So again, the first one was the 07, and now you guys are enjoying the 19. So the style is hope everybody's tasting is crisp, clean. The pineapple, some of those great nuances of Sauvignon Blanc that we really like. And because we have two vineyards, this is the Oakville Vineyard near our Silver Oak Napa Winery or Oakville Winery, and then another one, like I mentioned, in Calistoga, as well as two more in Sonoma County. This wine ends up being pretty much a 50-50 by-county blend. So the winemaking team sees how the Napa Valley fruit came in this year and how the Sonoma County fruit came in and makes a great blend. We're just with part of the management team, or actually the whole management team rather, the last few days, and we're trying the 2020 Sauvignon Blanc blend again. And while Matt's grandfather and my dad was with us and really enjoying these wines, he was always fascinated, and I had to remind him a couple times, especially later in life, that Dad, no, this is right. We're selling the 19 right now. But Tim, we're on the 15 Silver Oak. I know, this is cash flow. This is a good thing. You make this wine.
Let me ask you a question about it. I did read that you blend some Sonoma, about 50-50 Sonoma and Napa.
It ends up being about 50-50.
Is that because of the sources of fruit or the style? What's causing that decision?
So the property you're looking at on your screen, again, is right near Silver Oak, Oakville. The other, that's 14. There's another 14 in Calistoga, third 14 near our Twomey.
14 acres, you're talking about acreage.
Sorry, 14 acres. And then finally a 20-acre parcel in Sonoma County. So it's really just the balance of where the fruit comes in. We have 4 vineyards. They're all estate. And it does give the winemaking team that ability to think about what they're tasting, what's been presented in both counties, and come up with a blend, in that fashion. So it's really kind of a fun outgrowth of just the 4 vineyards we own. Again, all around that 14-acre size, except for the 20-acre one. So it's really just that simple. And they are different, and the climate's a little different. The soils are different, and it just allows a broader composition and broader brush to the winemaking team.
You see the picture here of the vineyard in Napa, so we're sort of looking north in Oakville. So to the west, or the left side of the screen, we're talking about Opus One, we're talking about Robert Mondavi, we're talking about the great, Harlan Vineyard up above on the west, and then to the east or the right of your screen, Screaming Eagle is just behind that, Pritchard Hill is just above it. So we're right smack dab in the middle of the Napa Valley. That's the Silver Oak Oakville Winery. And if you wonder, well, what does this add? What does this incredible Cabernet address add to the blend? I'll never forget the first time I really smelled what the first aromas for grape juice turning into wine can be like in a giant tank in 2013, my first year at the winery, when I was helping crush, to make the Sauvignon Blanc and Pinots for Twomey and Healdsburg. And this Oakville vineyard in this block you're looking at right in front of us on the screen, you could not imagine a more tropical fruit, just like the most delicious ripe mango you've ever bitten into, just overwhelming, shooting out of the tank as I was tasting it. So I think that's really the Napa side in a nutshell. It is this generous, this luxurious tropical fruit. It can be flashy and it can be sexy all on its own. And we don't totally want to make, a fruit bomb Sauvignon Blanc. We want it to have a little more structure, a little more acidity. And that's where the Sonoma side of the fruit comes in. So you have to sort of balance the two Napa Sonoma Sauvignon Blanc styles.
It's got a great richness and the aromatics, and it pops out of the glass. There are very few wines that I can remember almost the exact date and time that I tasted. And this Sauvignon Blanc is that. And it was, I'm going to say July 2nd, but nobody on the call can criticize me. So
Gary, let's see, it was the 47 Cheval Blanc you had, and it was the 61 Latour and the 19 Sauvignon Blanc and Twomey. Yeah, that sounds about right. Yeah.
It was the 2000. It was 19. It was 2009, and we.
Oh, wow.
I brought a group of friends to Napa, and when did you reopen the winery?
In 08.
08, yeah.
So this was the summer of 09, and I had not been to the new winery. So somebody, you or your brother, somebody suggested I come by for lunch.
Right.
So we came by for lunch. First off, for those of you on the call that have not been to the winery, as horrifying it is to lose a winery in a fire, the miracle of the rebirth of the brand and the winery after what you did it is one of the most state-of-the-art, fantastic facilities I've ever been in.
Thank you.
And here we get there to Silver Oak to have lunch and to taste through the wines. And the first wine they give me is a Sauvignon Blanc. And I'm like, you guys don't make Sauvignon Blanc. And I didn't even realize.
But it was second vintage.
That you had Twomey Sauvignon Blanc. I'm not sure the New Jersey distributor even had it at that point.
Maybe not, because production was small, obviously, to start
and
on a couple of vineyards.
I'm going to lie and say I remember there was either shrimp or scallops when we were walking around, little bites. But drinking the Sauvignon Blanc as we were walking around, it was just so delicious.
Yeah.
And, ever since that day, I've had a fondness for your Sauvignon Blanc. But anyway.
Thanks.
So we've gotten warmed up. So tell us a little bit about, the winery, a little more history.
Well, so Matt brought up one point that I just thought I'd clarify. So go back to that vineyard, Matt. So as he mentioned, with those vaulted names to the east and the west, why Sauvignon Blanc? Why are you guys planting, right in the middle of Oakville and Cab Country, Sauvignon Blanc? And it honestly is kind of a great allusion to how we do it in total, meaning Justin tried Cabernet while he was still making wine, and we own this property since 72, like I mentioned. And I believe we actually pulled it once and started again with different clones, and it just never was that great for being, main on main, right in the middle of the Napa Valley, primarily because of that soil and that location is exactly that. It's right in the middle of the valley. The Napa River is to the west and Concrete to the east. And they just over, the millennia have laid down more sediment and more soil than on the rockier sides on either side of the valley.
But correct me if I'm wrong. If we go due north straight to that's Mount St. Helena, right?
Mm-hmm.
Mount St. Helena.
So if we go straight, we're going to hit Round Pond has some great Sauvignon Blanc.
Exactly.
Saint Superi is just up there. Yeah.
Saint Superi. So in that line, Honig Sauvignon Blanc, Frog's Leap Sauvignon Blanc, maybe even a little Duckhorn. So even though we all think of Napa Valley as Cabernet, red, in your line of sight, straight north is a beautiful area.
You're right. And again, it's really in between those two. Again, Concrete not being the Napa River, but being near these waterways that then over the time have put those soils on there. So, and once we did make that change and planted it and then started to see the fruit, we knew we were right and knew that those soil types. And again, my point is just, what we knew back in 72 in the 70s and the 80s isn't what we know now. It's just everything keeps evolving. And of course, my last point is that, Sauvignon Blanc is the other key component of Bordeaux. So they grow Cabernet, Merlot, Cabernet Franc. Well, they do Chardonnay, right? No, that's Burgundy. Sauvignon Blanc is Bordeaux. And that's, those are terrific wines and all the way from dry to sweet wine. So
great point.
Yeah, just we're learning from our European brethren all the time too.
And Peter mentioned on the question or comment that he thought the Sauvignon Blanc was fantastic. And for those of you who didn't see, feel free to go onto the chat and we will make every effort to answer them. So who are these two?
So this is my dad, right? Or my dad, Matt's grandfather in the cap. Make sure depending on perspective, and then Justin Meyer, his partner, winemaker. The Duncans weren't the winemakers; we were the business partner and supportive. And now, of course, with my and Matt's contribution, we're really shoulder to shoulder and on the street. But Justin was a Christian brother for 15 years. Met my dad when he was still Brother Justin, and right in a very short amount of time, maybe over 18 months, he left the brotherhood, helped co-found Silver Oak and become the president and winemaker, and got married. So
wow, so
big year, yeah.
Do you think he tasted
a business married gentleman? And Bonnie and Justin had 3 children, 2 sons and a daughter. Matt, the middle one, is still in the wine business under the Meyer label, and this is a shot long ago at a ranch we own in Colorado, where Justin was a fun-loving guy, and he always had a great time at the ranch and drink a lot of wine and tell stories, and a really gentle soul. Always kept that 15-year participation in the brotherhood close to his heart. Kept in touch with the brothers. Definitely had them to the winery, and so while he was a layman, with us, he definitely had that religious piece too, and it was really a nice balance. He was my boss. People always ask, well, God, it really must have been neat to work for your dad. I'm like, my dad and brothers, 2 of the brothers grew up, as I did, in Colorado and stayed there. In California, it was Justin Meyer, and he was, as the name maybe suggests, a German gentleman, and he was as strict and as hard as he was gentle and kind. So it was an interesting balance. He wanted to do well for him, and he really helped form my, education in the wine business and watch his passion. He'd get out on the road. He'd give great speeches. He did great wine dinners. People loved him. He, was kind of a rock star, definitely in the 70s, 80s, and 90s, and knew, Robert Mondavi personally, as my dad did, and, was friends with Werner Rombauer and the Duckhorns and just all these guys, because it was just a small community. The Barretts at Montelena and Warnarskis and on and on and on. They were just, these were the guys. They were just part of the group. And Justin dove in from the vintners to the Wine Institute to, again, any needs the Christian brothers had to just be part of.
We have Mark joining in the chat saying he met Brother Justin at Greystone in maybe 71 or 72, so even before Silver Oak.
And probably 71, because by fall of 72 was, obviously our first beginnings. But yeah, there was a lot going on, and he was accessible. My dad showed up with a couple steaks and a 6-pack of Coors, and brother Justin said, "Come on in, Raymond." So it was, very humble beginnings, but it's been a lifelong passion of mine through his participation.
That's great. But you guys decided never to make the wine yourself.
Justin, as he started to head towards retirement, hired Daniel Barron, our second winemaker, and Daniel helped hire Nate Weiss, our current winemaker. So it's really, not so far in the Duncan lineage. Has anybody gone to Davis and, taken that piece? But we certainly are involved, in the blends and everything else.
Yeah,
but it's tough. I mean, you can't take it for granted. I mean, it is a special talent. I mean, you work really, really hard at it. But I remember in high school being asked if what I thought I would do in my career, and do you think you'll be the winemaker? With the kind of explicit insight that if that's what I thought, or that's what I was imagining as a punk 16, 17-year-old, job number one wasn't going to be at Silver Oak. Job number two probably wasn't going to be at Silver Oak, and who knows about job number three. But the winemakers, Justin included, and the two winemakers we've had since, and the winemaking team, they all have decades of experience at other wineries all over the world. It's not just something you pick up in a textbook and I think I know how the fermentations work. I mean, this is a special talent.
No, that's one of the great things about wine and winemaking is that it's always changing and learning and evolving. And the more you taste, the more you work with people, the better. I got to tell you, we need to talk a little bit about this Pinot Noir. I have it in my glass. And Peter, thank you. I met Peter at Jay Rosen's big bottle party.
Cool.
So you've probably met Jay. He comes to premiere every year with me.
I remember the first name.
He's a big character.
Yeah.
A character. But the nose on the Twomey Pinot Noir is explosive. I haven't tasted it yet.
So it's a special one.
Twomey began in '99 with our first Merlot, but '02 was the very first Russian River Pinot Noir. And that was an outgrowth of really just my dad's interest in what else is out there, and our involvement in the Alexander Valley kept us close to Santa Rosa and Healdsburg, and we started driving West Side Road and taking a look around and tasting some things, and also just watching what people were doing. Where are they planting? What are they building in terms of wineries? And it was just enough with a friend that said, "Hey, I've got a leased piece of property. And I've got, whatever it was, 5 to 10 tons available in '02. You want to try it?" And like so many things in life, you start out small and modest. And we said, sure. And Daniel Barron was interested, and off we went. So that was the impetus to that. Twomey now, from a Pinot standpoint, is more complicated by a factor of 5 than Silver Oak, meaning we have about 10 or 11 appellation and single vineyard bottlings. Mm-hmm. Silver Oak, of course, just has 2 cabs still. And we just continue to explore different areas. We're up in Oregon and have a beautiful piece of ground that's right outside the town of Dundee, just right in the center of the action, and looking forward to watching that grow and evolve. We're up in Mendocino County in the Anderson Valley, and then buying grapes down from Bien Nacido in Santa Barbara County. So again, talk about more complicated for not.
But you haven't have you bottled anything, labeled anything to me?
Yes.
Pinot, there is one.
Yep. So there's a Dundee, and the name of the property, the prime piece, is called Prince Hill, and it was where Dick Erath built his home and lived. And Dick sold his label and his winery over, coming on 2 decades ago, and then just recently decided to fully retire in his early 80s and sell his home property and that 35-acre piece. So it's sweet, and Dick is, he is the Mondavi, or even before, of that area too, that really got up there in the early 60s and then started in the mid 60s, and he was one of them. And so we're very honored to have it. It's a really significant piece of ground that we're excited about.
But I got to tell you, what I'm getting, that Pinot Noir, but rich, ripe fruit nose. It's got great structure, and and there's enough acidity to hold it together. And I did see somewhere in the notes, it's under 14% alcohol, right?
Right. And
That's,
that's kind of a hallmark of all our wines.
yeah.
Maybe not under 14, but moderate and in balance. And then, let those aromas and on the palate, let the flavor profile really come through and just, and make it enjoyable and frankly age worthy, so that we really feel like, that 18 Russian River, while delicious tonight, is going to be so good in another 3 to 5 years and just continue to, increase in its
Is
enjoyment.
this the vineyard that we're
So no, this is another one. This is called Last Stop. So this is a more recent acquisition, but does go partly into the Russian River appellation blend. Yes, and so that's the problem with Pinot. We have a Last Stop single vineyard. Again, in Oregon, we have a Dundee and a Prince Hill. In Anderson Valley, we have an Anderson Valley appellation wine and a Monument Tree, which is the beautiful vineyard we own up there. So the problem is you just keep cutting the baby, and for good reason. Again, not unlike the French and Burgundy. Why don't you just put, those 10 hectares all in the same, blend and blend it together? Well, because that site is 30 meters above that one, and the sun hits this one a little differently, and that clone's different. And they're right. They do end up being different expressions of the same grape.
but then Matt has to work harder selling all these different expressions.
Well, we try.
That's right.
So that's why, unfortunately, Gary, sorry about this, that some of that's unknown to you, because we really don't wholesale a lot of the little ones that we only make a couple 300 cases of.
Yeah, no, I appreciate it.
Yeah, so that, that again is not atypical of other brands, but the ones we really like and where we have ability, we definitely will continue to do some single vineyard growth. But the appellation blends, again, like that Russian River, it's just right on point.
But the Russian River, it's drinking beautifully now, and it's got great richness. So this is 100% French oak.
So great point. Yep. Mm-hmm. So that is 100% French oak, and similar to, all these decisions, which barrels, which French oak, producers do you want to buy barrels from? And they've experimented and kind of, gathered around 3 to 4 to 5, depending on the vintage, and then how much new oak and how much 1-year-old and how much 2-year-old, and all that, of course, just takes time as a company and as a winery to trial and error, just to see what you like and what the consumer resonates with. And I think at this point now, coming on 20 years of almost of Pinot Noir production, we're really getting it sweet spotted. And there's so many different competitors, but just fellow wineries around us that you just go taste, whether it's up in Oregon or, in the Russian River area or down south. You just see what others are doing and go, wow, I really like that. Or, I really don't like that. And why? And, too much juicy oak or whatever it is. And I know our winemaking team is passionate about tasting and thinking about it.
Let me ask a question. Is you said winemaking team. Do you have the same winemaking team that makes Silver Oak, Alexander, Silver Oak, Napa, and Twomey?
No. I'm sorry, not the same team. There's different winemakers under Nate Weiss now that are just specifically responsible. We did just hire a young man over all the Twomey brands, and the way, of course, these things work, his first name is Justin Hiragoyen. So we have a Justin back in the house, and Justin's passion has been Pinot and has been his whole career up to this point has been focused.
Started in Burgundy at Domaine Favourly, and
it's interesting for me, thinking about the comparison to Burgundy and American Pinot Noir. And the challenge, I think, right now is if you say Chambord Musigny to a Burgundy drinker, they're going to understand what that means. If you say Dundee Hills versus Willamette, they may or may not know. So it's a little bit, but it's coming, and the quality is there. So it just takes time, I think, or we'll continue to.
Yamhill Carlton, I didn't know what that was 2 years ago. I know what it is now, and we've continued to. We just did a COVID safe trip recently, about when you were out too, a month ago, and took the winemaking team to go look around and check into our vineyard, but also just kind of see what was going on up there. And it's those trips and those days where you just are literally in a car driving around looking stopping and tasting, having some meetings, of course, but also just observing what's going on and how much it changed the last time you were there.
Yeah.
So,
No, it's delicious. Any other thoughts on the Pinot Noir?
yeah,
Or
only that,
strawberries?
you know, it's something we've been passionate about, and the other component and partner in Pinot is Chardonnay. And we are, like all these other beginnings that we've talked about, messing around with it. We have a full 2 acres on that Prince Hill property, which is delicious. It's just under a Willamette simple label right now that we're just using to check internally. And then a single acre over in the Russian River area for another, you know, acre to mess around with. So something that I just believe as, you know, the category right under Cabernet that we are missing and could do very well and would be fun in the vintages to come to create our own Chardonnay.
Right. Let me ask you a question. Are these all estate fruit, or are you buying some fruit too?
We buy a little bit up in Oregon from some spots. We had in the Anderson Valley too, from a couple that, you know, I knew of, Farrington for one, from William Sellium, for instance. And we also have a great relationship with Gary's Vineyard, another great Gary. Do you know of that one? It's down in the Santa Lucia, Santa Cruz area, and it's really it's a terrific one too. So where those opportunities come, basically where you can get fruit.
It's interesting for me because that's something I didn't know. I thought you were buying a lot of your fruit.
Most of it's come with
Really?
these wineries in the Anderson Valley. We're, you know, much more estate now with the recent.
Yeah, no, that's fantastic.
And then with Matt and his wife's experience out with Jasmine Hirsch, we actually bought a little Hirsch this year, so we're very excited about that too. So yeah,
Hirsch is. Matt, you have a Hirsch relationship?
Yeah, my wife worked there as a harvest intern in 2019, and we've become good friends with the Hirsches, and got very lucky earlier this year, and we're able to
Jasmine
buy
and David,
some.
and yeah.
No, I thought she was a Hirsch, and I was going to say, wow, this is.
No,
no.
But she grew up not too far from the Hirsch Vineyard on the Sonoma
Those
coast.
are some great wines.
And her dad still lives right near there. But Jasmine's, she's a terrific.
Yeah, and just to finish on the Chardonnay conversation, and I know I'm going back and forth. I got to tell you, last time I was in Oregon, I tasted some ridiculous Chardonnays.
I'm shaking my head no, but I agree.
Yeah, no,
I agree.
I was stunned, you know, because you hear Pinot Gris is the white, but Pinot Gris is,
that's right.
They're good wines, but they're not world class.
Gary, that's part of the reason when you sent out that 00 offer, I just, you know, I had to try this Chardonnay that was just turning heads from Oregon. My gosh, what's it like? You know, it's expensive, but we got to try it. So that's what I did. I bought both bottlings and brought it to Dad's house, and we tasted and we talked about it.
It's funny you said it. I think back to this Jay Rosen character, I think I had it with him in Oregon 2 years ago at the auction,
nice.
You know, around their auction time. So it's very funny, but that's, you know, we after last trip to Willamette, I came back and I brought in 4 or 5 Chardonnays, very different than you would get from, you know, Russian River or Caneros.
Definitely, and more similar to Burgundy.
Much more.
We also, you know, experiment here or there with $100 or a little more, you know, on a white Burgundy, and sometimes they're amazing. You know, there are producers that are consistently amazing. Others that we don't know, we know the region, but maybe not the producer. They're okay. Where the Oregon wines that I'm trying are just like, wow, that is delicious.
Yeah, really delicious.
Including, frankly, you know, plugging ours. My grandmother's name was Velma Twomey. So this is Ray's mom. So Twomey is a surname that obviously she dropped for Duncan when she got married. But the Velma first name we use for bottlings exactly like what I'm talking about. So the first 3 Sauvignon Blancs were a
experimental
Velma Sauvignon Blanc, and the current Chardonnay is Velma Chardonnay. So I don't have any to wholesale or anything to offer anybody, but trust me when I tell you it's we're on the right path, I think. And that's with Justin and another associate winemaker that's based up there, who's a terrific guy too. That's with their, you know, their thumbprint, handprint, whatever on it. So
it's funny. I had a note to ask you where the name came from, and I got distracted with the aromas on the Sauvignon Blanc, and I forgot.
And so even better, my dad's middle name was taken from his mom's maiden name. So he was Raymond Twomey Duncan. So that's, you know, while we were thinking of his mom, I honestly was too young to remember her. And, you know, it was really my dad's middle name that we were inspired to use Twomey from.
It's interesting. My son-in-law's middle name is his mother's maiden name.
Yeah, yeah, which I think was, you know, is a nice
Yeah,
recognition and yeah, continuation, especially if, you know, the last names change.
so it seems like we've in my mind, we're coming full circle, because this is when you say Silver Oak, when you mention Napa Valley, when you mention, even though we're tasting the Alexander Valley, the name Silver Oak is synonymous with great California Cabernet and a tradition and a history of great Cabernet. And the term from ground to glass has become more and more used, you know, from farm to table, from ground to glass. But I don't know many people that are from ground to glass, including the barrel that the wine came from. So before we taste it, can you share? Oh, there you go.
Yeah, I got pictures.
I played into your deck.
You did.
Yeah. So yeah, thank you. Let's start there for sure. So this is our barrel setup, gentlemen, looking for the right stave sizes. And it is unique. I don't know, you know, I guess the Gallows maybe rework barrels, and, you know, maybe Barbara and the Jackson family does things, but we own a cooperage, is what Gary's pointing to, in the middle of Missouri. And the reason it's in the middle of Missouri is because that's where the oak is. So the white oak, American oak trees are in a 3-state region, southern Illinois, all through Missouri and Iowa. And so the stave mills, which is the place you take a log to get cut into pieces for either furniture or, in our case, staves, are located there too. So we've been partnered with this cooperage for decades. And one family decided to get out first. And then a dozen years later, the second family said, you know, you guys ask too many questions. You want too much inventory control. And, you know, the wood's fine. Like, well, the wood's okay, but it's important that we be on top of it. So he said, we're willing to let you take it. So it was their initials, A and K, Andrews and Kirby. And then once we owned it, we rebranded it and obviously tied it into Silver Oak and just called it the Oak Cooperage. So what you're seeing in these pictures is after the setup and those temporary hoops on it, is the barrel without heads goes on the fire. And all that fire is just scraps of American oak that they keep at the right temperature and the right heat to be able to toast a barrel. So the barrel will stay on that, maybe on and off for 45 minutes, maybe an hour, just depends on what the temperature is. And frankly, by the time it's done, it's not blackened inside. The one on the bottom left is probably almost done. It's just a light toast, you know, maybe heading to medium, but it's not a whiskey barrel where they char the inside. So once that's done, you can take it off, take those temporary hoops off, put the heads on, nice hoop steel, and you've got a barrel. So they make about 25 a day, you know, 5 days a week, 50 weeks a year. And that's the production of that cooperage. We employ almost, we might be the number one, maybe the school is number one, but the second largest employer in the little town of Higbee. There's only about 300 people there, but you know, these folks not just like working for Silver Oak, but they love this. They love making barrels. They love this passion. It's generational. The stave mills are generational. The trees are sustainable. They go, you know, on people's property and just say, you know, we can take these 3 trees and pay you this, and you still have hundreds more. And they say, fine, and let's do it. And so it's really been a handcrafted and you know, time-honored tradition that for us to be able to literally say, how long do we want to age those staves out on the lot, which is, to answer the question, a couple of years. So once the stave comes onto our property, we still leave it outside for 2 years, bring it in, and then make it into a barrel that again holds the Napa for a couple of years and the Alexander for 2 years also. It's just, you know, unheard of. And it really was Justin's original recipe, if that's the right word, that he loved American oak barrels, found these guys, and over the decades, we just continued to get better and better at it to the point where we decided to own the company.
I at one point had thought that Napa was 100% American oak and Alex was not.
So the difference is Napa, it's a little less now, is 100% new American oak. The
Okay.
Alexander is 100% American oak, but half new and half 2-year-old barrels.
Okay. I knew there was a,
Yeah, so that just gives the Alexander a little less, a little less new oak, a little less the toast and the
Yeah.
flavor profile.
and maybe a little more approachable, younger.
Yeah, a little, yes, exactly.
Not-
The blend of the Napa with some Merlot, Cabernet Franc, Petit Verdot, Malbec in it stands up to that, 100%.
So Robert asked whether owning the cooperage allows us a finer level of control over the final oak component. Do you want to talk about the Cooper trial and all the innovations we're working on?
Yeah, well, thank you, good question. So that's kind of what I was suggesting. Nate Weiss and his team can literally say, we tried 3 barrels, we made a dozen barrels, 4 different iterations, 3 each. Let's put wine in them, 22-month age staves, 24, 26, a little different toasting. So yes, the answer is absolutely. There's no reason not to have the winemaking team and what we're tasting head right back to the cooperage and find that sweet spot. And we really have. We found that, anything longer than 26 months out in the yard is getting a little too long. So you're leaching out too many of the good flavors. And that was to be honest, was part of the problem with our previous partner was, I got those barrels made. Well, did you pull it from the old pile? I don't know if they did. Well, what did you make it out of? Like 6-month-old. And it was obviously very noticeable and things that, Justin just couldn't tolerate and Dan Barron after him, we had to control and correct. So yeah, the answer is absolutely. And they'll sit there and taste. Do you think tasting blends is rough? Tasting barrel cooperage trials is really rough. They're young wines, the barrels are very evident, but you're really trying to get a sense of, not unlike seasoning your steak, what are you doing with that oak barrel and what's it contributing to the wine?
You bring up a good point. Beyond the 100% new versus half,
Right.
are you toasting them slightly different for oak Napa versus Alex?
Not necessarily, no. I think we like the silver oak sweet spot in general. Yeah. And we do, because, it's good to learn and good to hedge a little bit. We do buy barrels from Sauvignon Moreau, American oak barrels, and test a few other things out just so we're aware of what they're doing, what we're doing. And there are, obvious risk factors when you have all your wood on one Missouri spot and you have a cooperage there. And it hadn't come up till this last meeting I just mentioned. And, Tony said, well, tornadoes are moving further and further west. I was like, Tony, can't we just go pick up all the pieces if they get spread over 3 counties? I mean, obviously we wouldn't want to experience any of that, but you don't know. You want to keep your options open.
But it's the same idea as buying fruit from a neighboring vineyard. You want to see what your neighbor's doing. You want to see what that slope, that aspect is like. You want to keep yourself honest. So you try what other folks are doing in your same.
But in the trials, when we do it blind, we come back to the oak. We prefer ours best. So those guys are nailing it. They take a lot of pride in it. Again, some of the old timers knew Justin himself. So they go back a long time in the families for sure.
Yeah, George is asking a question about the current vintages. Have they been affected by the fires? And what we're tasting is the 16 Alex.
So good question. The first one was really the 17s, and no, except for, and I'll move to 2020 in a minute, except for the 2020, we were picked primarily because these were later. These were mid-October, heading to November. So some vintners definitely were affected in 17 and 19 because they wanted to, whether the vineyard needed to hang longer, they just preferred that. Doesn't matter. They were out there and exposed. We were not. And then in 2020, the Sonoma County side was much less affected than some of the previous years. So the Alexander Valley 2020 looks fine. The Napa, we just had to make the same decision others did. Some of our hillside pieces up on Atlas Peak and up on Soda Canyon, we didn't pick. And if we did, get some of it in and it wasn't going to be up to par, we let it go. We just, won't make the blend. So we're making a little less Alexander Valley just because we didn't get to a few vineyards we would have, and certainly less Napa Valley in 2020.
But not a lost vintage or a tainted vintage, just a smaller vintage.
No, and so there's no reason to have been doing this for 48 years, heading to our 50th, and make any compromises. It just, we won't want to drink it. You won't want to drink it. If it's evident or we were worried about it, it didn't, it's not in the tank room. It's not heading to a blend, much less a barrel.
It's interesting. And what you said is, I applaud you, but it's 100% true for, I think, everybody that I know in wine country. There's nobody that's going to put their name on a bottle.
Up to and including, the Schaefer decision to do nothing in 2020. I mean, I get it.
You have to live with it. Once you make that decision, you have to live with it.
And that, that's kind of all their eggs in one basket. We are spread out, like we've been talking about, in several counties now, even a couple of states. What the other effect was in Oregon, and Oregon didn't have a fire, not near wine country. Yeah, but it was inland during that Memorial Day holiday. And of course, anybody that followed that, there were devastating lives lost, and hundreds of miles away. But the smoke and the AQI, all these new terms we're learning was significant, and we are making nothing from Oregon. I'm sorry, I shouldn't say that. There was a very little bit of Pinot that we got in early, but the experimental Chardonnay, nope, and most of the Pinot were not, wasn't even a question. Nor was it, unfortunately, for most people in that Willamette area, because it was 350, 400 AQI day after day.
But the good news, and there is a lot of good news, is that there's a lot of 2018 Twomey available.
That's right.
Yep.
There's a lot of 2016 Alex available, both available at Garrett's Wine Marketplace in St. Helena and New Jersey. So you have nothing to worry about for the next few years of drinking. So
19s are looking good. And again, our 20s for the bulk of the portfolio are fine. And of course the wine writer and the critic will come along and paint a broad brush over a vintage, and that happens in all wine regions. But it is certainly a climate change issue, something we're looking at as a community. Gary, you know this too, and trying to harden our electrical lines and power shutoffs and other things that are meant to prevent what happened. Unfortunately, the glass fire, the most recent one, was just had nothing to do with electricity. Well, it did, but it was a mistake by a neighbor, and in the right conditions can cause these wildland fires. So taking some trees down and opening things up a little bit has been kind of forbidden, but I know we're changing our tune and trying to make sure that we're safe. And you're right, during COVID, it was tough enough to just do that, but when you had to be closed because the smoke level was too high, and literally, whether your guests or your employees shouldn't be out in it, you're just like, what else could happen this year? But so far, so good. Our retailer partners are kicking butt, so.
and we know some of them. Wow, this looks like it's in Napa, because I remember trying to steal one of those 5-liter bottles, and they wouldn't let me out with it without giving my credit card.
Yeah,
why is that?
I remember, wasn't the police; it was just security. They came by. So this is a shot of our.
I've been drinking the 16 Alex now. I got to tell you, it's beautiful, right? It's drinking. It's got good structure. It's got good tannin. I'm not sure I could taste new oak versus one.
Yeah, that oak subtlety is right.
Yeah, but it's got some real good structure and great mid palate. And it has me coming back for more, which is great. And so this is the 16. What vintage Napa are we on?
Currently the 15. The 16 Napa is just rolling out, but typically would start next February, just 60 days or whatever it is from now. So it's right on. We're right on the heels of that. We're at the end of the 15 Napa.
Anything you want to share about the Alex or the 16 Napa when it comes?
Well, I was thinking in general, I get the question because I didn't know if you were going to go there. You almost went there. That the 16 Alex is so soft and delicious right now. Will it age? Is this about it, or a couple more years will it start to come apart? And the answer is absolutely not. And for me, the easiest number to remember is a 10-year window. So 10 from vintage date. So 2026 for that 16 Alex will really be its full opening and a full sweet spot of its potential. And then from there, 15, 20, 25 years in the 750 is very easy for silver oak. So there is lots of, balance means ageability, not the other way around where, wow, these tannins need to soften. I hope in, 5 more years, this wine will be more drinkable. And the answer is, unfortunately, that's not the case. It can be, I suppose, depending on how your palate and what you're looking for. But, if you don't have finesse and you don't have balance today, it's not going to materialize tomorrow. It just doesn't work that way.
Right. But it is a guarantee for this vintage for Silver Oak through 2043. So if you buy it tonight from Gary's, New Jersey or California, and you don't like how it's aging, 20 years down the road, or there's something wrong with it, it's corked, whatever, we will replace it, way out into the future.
I actually, a true story. I had a guy, I would say like 10 years ago, he was buying a lot of wine, and every wine he'd pick up, he said, how long can I age this? How long will it last? How long, it's like, and he wanted like a guarantee. So finally I said, this wine is really expensive. I said, well, you can't touch it for at least 22 years. And then in 22 years, drink it. And he said, oh, that's great. And he wrote 22 on the back of the bottle. And he said, well, how'd you come up with 22 years? I said, because I know I'll be long gone. And I don't have to deal with you worrying about when you could drink your wine.
Here's Mike's cell phone. You can call Mike. His home phone.
That's why we'll hand it off to Mike. But there's been...
it depends what you're eating and how you feel. And, this is the first wine of the night. But for our cabs, time is a benefit. And again, 10 is kind of a neat number.
But our favorite answer to that from Justin Meyer, our original winemaker and my granddad's partner, was, how long will the wine age? Well, how big is your cellar? Well, I don't have a big cellar. I just have a little, closet. Well, then it's not going to age a year because you're going to drink it, unless you have a big wine cellar, you're not going to hold it 10 years. You're going to drink it.
So some of my friends that I know are on the call, Sheila, you could start drinking your cabs. Robert, who's just spent almost a month in St. Helena at our house. You keep buying for the future and drink your mom and dad's wine now.
Right.
And that's the way I would definitely do that. And for people getting married, you need big bottles, right? Because at a wedding, what you want is those big old bottles of wine. So my suggestion is, like voting, buy early and often.
And hold on. Yeah.
And hold on to it for the right thing.
And Gary's can have them. We can have 3 liters and 6 liters for those weddings available to you through Gary's.
Do either of you gentlemen have any closing comments you would like to make? Any more questions while we're here?
Had some good ones. Thanks for the great questions.
And Mike, I wasn't necessarily talking about you with the wedding. As I said it, I realized we're talking towards Robert, who's engaged. So I don't want to get in trouble.
I guess maybe only from my standpoint, we're in it for the long haul. Silver Oak's been around, again, almost 50 years, and we will be around for a long time to come. And while
I want to finish. What you made a point about long haul, and I want to once again applaud you. You mentioned vineyards, that you've been buying vineyards.
Right.
I was at June auction, which will never be the same, or not in a short term, because it was at Meadowood. And I was there in the 2012 as a Meadowood for the June auction. And a friend came over with a Magnum of 2005 Ovid.
Nice.
And that wine is spectacular. We drank it.
Right.
And that was a spectacular bottle of wine.
That was the first vintage, the first commercial vintage.
And that was, it was not, and that's what Napa's all about. They saw me and they had this Magnum and they came over to where we were sitting and they said, I know you're current release. Try this. And they had to arm wrestle me to take the rest of the bottle back, but spectacular. So you purchased off it a few years ago.
So for those that kind of know of this wine, it's OVID, named after the Greek poet, and it was founded and started by another family. And so, the Duncan family with some outside partners grabbed it 4 years ago now. So that same style and same enjoyment you received is still going today, because Austin Peterson was their founding winemaker. and is younger than me, so he's got a long career still to go, and he's still up there doing it, and we're just really enjoying it.
Yeah, but
Having fun.
I've always thought the wines there were spectacular, and I love the experiment and, you know, playing with, you know, some odds and ends, and just it's a I was excited for you guys when I heard that you bought it. The property to visit is breathtaking.
Yeah, and the location is right in the middle of the other vaulted names up on Pritchard Hill.
Yeah,
It allows us, you know, as a winemaking family and organization to just get that experience. Nate's been up there, you know, other winemakers can go up and see what Austin's doing, how he's doing it, talk about, you know, his philosophy and bring that back internally, not necessarily to, you know, change our wines, but just to be able to see what other people do with, you know, the same paints and canvas and paintbrushes that we all use.
yeah. But you guys, you know, you're a testament to building for the future, and taking you know, seizing opportunity, and clearly at the realm of the quality. You know, it seems like everything you do, it's quality first. And you know, it makes my job easier because when we have one of these labels on the shelf, I don't have to hand sell it. You know, all I have to do is have it, and people know the quality. And for that, I say cheers to Matt. You have a lot of work to do because your father and uncle and grandfather have really created something special.
And my 4-month-old in the other room. I do have a lot of work to do.
Absolutely.
There is one other. So I mentioned Twomey Merlot, and the 16 was our very last Merlot. So now we do have a fourth brand, and it's called Timeless. And it was conceived of after our dad's passing, and as a recognition to him. But it's the same vineyard, Soda Canyon, near the Silverado Country Club. But we took the gloves off and let the Napa Valley's best fruit and, you know, best blends take over. So it's mainly Merlot, but with Cabernet, Cab Franc, Petit Verdot, and different levels. And I don't know, Gary, if you've gotten any and have sold any.
We have it available in
We did.
stores in New Jersey.
Yeah.
Great. It is more expensive, so sorry about that, guys, but it is delicious, and it's been a great opportunity.
I have to get a sample. I tried to get that for tonight's tasting, but you guys didn't have it.
Yeah, so that's
We'll do another one. We'll do a Timeless next year.
That's a shot of the vineyard rolling back up to the Silverado expensive homes, but that's the fourth pillar in the winemaking family. So
That's
thank
great.
you so much. I appreciate it.
Thank you so much for joining us. Thank you all. Thanks for asking great questions. Mike, thanks for being behind the scenes. I have to go now. I'm doing a Sangiovese tasting at 8 o'clock.
Matt and I we have a whole winery event. We're going to make a soup, and I'll get on Zoom, and I don't know, 200 people are going to try to talk to each other. So we're doing that right now.
Good luck with that.
Life is good.
Thank you all, guys. Take care.
Cheers. Thanks so much, Gary.
Stay safe.
Take care.